Hello, my name is Tabby Kamangala here on Times TV for a special program dedicated to health issues. In this scenario, we'll be discussing all things regarding mental health. Now, mental health has been a subject of focus of late in our country, the warm heart of Africa, Malawi. But there seems to be gaps in terms of information that has been given or provided in that regard. Well, here to answer all our questions regarding mental health issues, joining me in the studio will be Limbika Maliwichi, a lecturer from the University of Malawi, also known as UNIMA, and also Chilungamo Manga from Kamuzu University of Health Sciences, also known as KUHES, in this special program to shed more light on the matter. Welcome to the program, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, to kickstart our interview, obviously I've just introduced that we're here to discuss mental health issues, but somebody at home may be watching and curious, what is mental health? What would you describe it as?
So mental health is the ability of a person to be able to think, feel, and behave right in a way where they're able to enjoy life and also be able to overcome the difficulties that they meet. However, let me clarify, because most times when people talk about mental health, they talk about it in a negative manner because they feel like mental health is their disease or the condition. So mental health is just health in general, but now it's not like, apart from the physical health, we have now the mental health. And by mental health, we're not even talking about the mind alone. We're talking about the thinking of the person, the feeling of the person, and the behaving aspect of the person, because these three are linked. That's why they're all just classified as mental health.
Interesting. Now, Limbika, with regards to mental health, how important is it for an individual, both male and female in this scenario, to know what mental health is and also to know what their state, the state of the mental health is?
So when we talk mental health, I think mental health is very important at every stage in one's life. So from childhood, adolescence, and childhood, adolescent, and adulthood, and later adulthood, and even during pregnancy, it's very important. So why is it very important? I think mental health, even though in our parts of the world has been a bit neglected, but it's very important because if one is not mentally stable, then you have problems. One, maybe coping. You may not be able to cope with life problems. So we all experience stress. At one point or another, everybody has experienced stress. But what separates one from, that stress negatively affecting you is how you cope. So if somebody is mentally stable, they're more likely to use positive coping mechanisms than negative coping mechanisms, and also relationships. If one is emotionally stable, they're more likely to have satisfying relationships, they're more likely to sustain relationships, they're more likely to contribute to relationships. So when I say relationships, I'm not just talking about intimate relationships.
Because I was gonna ask you to clarify. Is this a relationship, a marriage? What are we talking about?
Not only. So we're talking about if you're a child and the child is mentally stable, she's most likely to behave well in the house. She's most likely to respect the adults. She's most likely, to be a good child. Behave well. If it's a parent, you're more likely to take good care of your children. You're more likely to pay attention to the children's needs and act on them. So if you have friends, you're more likely to be a good friend. You're listening to your friends' problems. You're paying attention to the emotions of your friends. So even in intimate relationships, so it's all across, even at work. If you're mentally stable, you're more likely to have good relationships with your colleagues. You're more likely to be motivated also. So you'll be motivated. Your performance will be better if you're mentally stable. If you're not mentally stable, you just wake up, you go to work, and you may not perform. Not because you're not capable, but because you're mentally unstable. And also, in children, for example, for them to be able to perform at school, they have to be mentally stable. They should be able to concentrate, read, study, and understand what is happening. So if you can see at all these stages, it doesn't matter what sex you are. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter what culture you're coming from, your background, your race. we all need to be mentally stable.
You see, this is why I think this program was very important, because first of all, as a, an individual, I am aware of mental health, but I didn't know that it also occurs in children, which is what you've made mention. I mean, Chilungamo Limbika has spoken much about causes, and she made mention of relationships and what have you. But as an individual, if I'm having mental health issues, how do I know? What are the signs and the symptoms?
So we have a lot of signs and symptoms of mental health problems, depending also on the specific mental disorder that you have. So some may be mild, not that serious, some may be severe, and some may be symptoms of that are found in both, like two different types of mental illnesses. And also they differ according to age, the stage at which someone is. Now, when someone is having mental health problems, some of the symptoms that they can experience include feeling sad, like for like a long period of time. Sometimes people go through things and they're like sad or angry, but now this type of sadness is like severe. So you go beyond 2 weeks, you don't even know sometimes why you're sad. Sometimes you're angry for no reason. Some people will just cry for no reason. Every little thing that's happening, they're crying, and they don't even understand why they're crying. Others, like children, they'll have extreme type of tantrums. Some will start wetting their beds. Some will start just wanting to more attention than usual. If we're talking about teenagers, they will start to involve themselves in risky behavior. They will use drugs. They will want to drink a lot, like that. And then in adults, sometimes you find people who are lacking concentration, they're not being productive. They would like to focus on something, but they just can't. Some people who have low energy. So we're talking about you're waking up in the morning, you're already tired, you feel like they're sleeping the whole day. Others will have difficulty sleeping, others eating. Others who also have distorted reality, whereby the things that they are seeing are things that they're the only ones seeing those things. So no one else is able to see those things. They'll hear things that are not really there, but they can actually hear and obviously. Yeah, so depending on the type of mental disorder that someone has. So we have a variety of them, also depending on the disorder that someone has.
Right. Now, speaking of disorders, what are some of the mental disorders or illnesses that one is most likely to have? I don't know if Limbika, you want to take this one, or she should.
I think she has already tackled the symptoms. You might as well go all the way.
Yeah. So anyway, when we talk about mental disorders, we have actually a lot of them as well. But I'll just mention a few. So we have depression, which is, I think, one of the most common mental disorders that people may have. And when you have a depression, this is the type of disorder whereby you experience, I talked about sadness, whereby you're just sad. You wake up in the morning, you're sad, you feel like you don't want to associate with people anymore, so you feel withdrawn. You start to dislike the things that you used to love. You start to feel like, well, worthless in a way. You feel like, why am I even living? I feel like people would be better off without me. Others may reach a point where they become suicidal. And so it's mostly the one that comes up most is the sadness part, but then these other things follow. Now, when you have anxiety, we also have a disorder that's called anxiety disorder. Even under disorder, you have like a variety of them. But now the common symptoms that people will experience are the fear. So a person is just filled with fear. They would like to do something, they would like to go to class, but the fact or just the thought of them going for class will make them feel so afraid. They will just be worried about it, and they'll just have thoughts about it, like something may happen to me. They'll feel like they don't have the motivation, even the confidence to do anything. They'll, so that's they're usually just filled with that anxiety when it comes to even to talk to people. Other people have a disorder whereby they can't stand in front of people, they can't speak in public, things like those. So that's another disorder that people may have. And then we have another one where individuals are obsessed with cleanliness, orderliness, it's OCD. So you're like, if you see anything not in place, or you see two bottles that are on the table, but you feel like they're only facing the other direction, I just want them to be okay. Because if you don't fix them, you want to be okay.
Wait a minute, that's a form of anxiety?
Yeah, okay, it used to, but now there's somehow they've just separated.
Or is it
at first it was under the anxiety as well.
Now it's under mental health, mental health disorder.
Well,
how would you describe OCD?
OCD, okay, as in the characteristics?
Or where does it fall under? Is it a mental health issue?
Mm-hmm.
Is it under anxiety?
Yeah.
It's a mental health.
Anxiety is a mental health issue as well.
Right.
Yeah. So they're both under mental health problems or conditions. So you feel like washing your hands all the time.
Right.
You just, you've washed your clothes, but you want to go back and wash it again after like a few minutes, something like that. And I talked about schizophrenia, or maybe I just talked about the characteristic where you start to see things.
Yeah.
You start to see people. You notice that the people who have such a condition will be talking to someone, and you can't see anyone around, but they can see the people, they can hear the people, like that. So those are some of the disorders that are there. Yeah.
And now, as you said, there's a mouthful of these disorders, but you've made mention of, I think, 4. I didn't know OCD was a form of a mental health issue, so it's, this is very enlightening and important to know. Somebody watching or listening in and wondering, okay, so you've described all of this. We now know the causes. We now know what mental health is. We now know the signs and the symptoms as well. But where can I get treatment if I'm thinking to myself, what Chilungamo, what Limbika just said, I'm experiencing that. But what do I do after noticing that I've got these issues?
Okay, so when it comes to treatment, maybe before I move on to where, but maybe just to mention the options that are there. So you have psychotherapy, which, people, there is, some people will call it counseling. Okay, we differentiate